Hi, welcome to Switching Mindsets. This is Anuradha, and I'm speaking to Nitesh Batra. Nitesh is a certified compassion cultivation trainer and mindfulness teacher and founder of the Mindful Initiative. Hi, Nitesh. How are you?
Very good. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast, Anuradha. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm great and very happy to be speaking to you finally. We've been scheduling this for a while. Uh,
I'm
uh,
glad to be here.
yeah. You said you wanted to start with a meditation.
Yeah, I think it's always good to get started with a short practice. Whoever is listening in, if they feel comfortable, they can also join us. Maybe for a couple of minutes, if you are comfortable. Uh, and
Sure.
usually because it's an audio podcast, so I'll try to give some visual clues as well as we meditate.
Right.
Uh, and for the meditations that I suggest, we do it with our eyes closed.
Okay.
And if people want to keep their eyes open, they can lower their gaze and look at an object in front of them. And so let's begin this meditation by gently closing our eyes, inhaling deeply through our nose and exhaling through our mouth. Inhale again from our nose and feeling relaxed as we exhale. Inhaling again and gently exhale again. Now we continue to inhale and exhale through your nose, trying to feel calm, letting the thoughts settle within our mind, and simply focusing on your breath. And as you breathe in and breathe out, not getting carried away by our thoughts, maybe thinking about the past, maybe dreaming about the future, just staying present, focusing on our breath as you continue to breathe in and breathe out. Maybe let's set an intention for today's practice. Intention to be present and be aware with our breath so that it helps us be calm, helps us be focused, and helps us to be in the moment. Maybe we have all come from different places, different time zones, maybe different activities in the morning, afternoon, and evening. At this moment, the minds that we have are all the same. Nature of the mind is the same. No matter what, if you focus on your breath, the thoughts within the mind start to subside. And let's bring this meditation practice to a close. As we said, this is a short practice. Let's do a single short dedication, always thanking ourselves. And if you feel comfortable, you can repeat after me. May we all be at peace. May we all be at peace. May we all be at peace. Slowly and gently rubbing your hands against each other, placing them on your arms, on your shoulders, on your neck, and finally on your face. And then gently opening your eyes. Gently opening eyes.
Yes, this was great. So, welcome again now with a lot of clarity.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So, this is pretty much the essence of mindfulness, right? Being aware in the present moment and focusing on your breath, right?
It
So,
is.
if yeah, to start with, if you could talk about what is mindfulness since you've just done this meditation, and
Mm,
how is it different from meditation?
mm. Um, so mindfulness originally comes from a Sanskrit word called sati. That's what it is. And the origins, they date back to Buddha. That's what we know. Uh, and maybe it existed in different forms before Buddha came in the Vedas, because the concept is similar. The Vedantic traditions and Buddhist traditions, and even the Jainism, uh, and in Sikhism also, the idea exists the same way, that within our body, if we are focusing on one particular object or the task that we are doing, we are mindful about it, that uh, we are concentrating on one particular thing, and that makes us mindful. That's as simple as it can get. And that can be any activity that you are undertaking. So let's say, for example, you like to run and you're just running and not doing anything else. Or, for example, you're cutting vegetables. I think Thich Nhat Hanh, in his book, I think one of the finest books on mindfulness, if anyone is ever interested, and it's called Mindfulness by Thich Nhat Hanh. And I think within the first chapter, the first page itself, and he defines as, when you're washing the dishes, wash the dishes. uh, and the nature of the mind is such that it will make up stories, it will think about something else, whether it's something in the past or something in the future, or it will be creative, some ideas will come to the mind. And mindfulness is ignoring all that and focusing on the task at hand. Um, and when you do that in such a way that you are in the moment, you can cherish what you're doing. The other element which John Kabat-Zinn, who was given the definition in the modern sense, who's the founder of Mindful Based Stress Reduction Program, I think in the early or late 80s, uh, he said that being aware, being in the present moment, in a particular way, so that's what Thich Nhat Hanh was referring to. But he added the other element, which is one of the pillars of mindfulness, is being non-judgmental. That when you are in the moment, if you start to judge things, then of course you have to use the where the discriminative part, what we call as viveka, part of the brain. And when you start using that part of the brain, you're not in the moment, you start analyzing things. So if you are non-judgmental, and it has multiple purposes, but one of the most important things is that it helps you being in the moment, because by being judgmental you have to think more, and one thought spawns another thought, and then you're on this train, and then in a moment you're just gone, right? So that's what mindfulness really is. And meditation, on the other hand, there are many definitions of meditation, and we are so fortunate, as I always say, to be in a nation where we feel that meditation really took birth at a very early age within our country. Uh, and meditation is a way for us to understand our mind. It's a communication language, essentially. It's a way for us to really understand the thoughts which are going within our mind, make sense of it, but more importantly, understand what is happening outside the physical layer within ourselves. So you are able to grasp what is happening, and the connection between both is also very beautiful. Uh, uh, that meditation helps you to be mindful. Uh, and mindfulness, you can do it in any way, any form or fashion that uh, that you're involved in. But meditation can be also done many ways. But the kind of meditation that I practice is sitting down meditation with our eyes closed. That's the form that I practice and teach as well. Uh, and that's what the essential relationship between meditation is. And meditation came from the Yoga Sutras, one of the earliest philosophical texts in India. Uh, Dhyana was the word that was used. It was called dhyan, and then it has traveled its own journey. And in Tibetan, also, we have meditation, and it means familiarizing our mind. So that's what meditation means in Tibetan. Uh, each has its own way of expressing it. So that's
R-
what the differentiation is.
Right. And you mentioned the founder of modern mindfulness. So I remember John Kabat-Zinn, right? I'm not sure how you pronounce that,
Either
but
I've never met him. John is good.
John is good. Yeah. So, so he, I remember said it's also about your negative emotions and stress, right? Mindfulness is also not fighting that. So I think he made an analogy. I was trying to look for the exact thing about like there's a tiger, and instead of fighting the tiger, you're sitting with the tiger. So you're just sitting with each other. You're not, so you accept it. So how does that work? For people, there's so much stress these days.
I think there was stress all the time. That's part of.
All the time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of uh, the human way of living. I think over the past 20, 30 years, there has been an expression or the interest in mental health. Though I believe, as I mentioned earlier, we have been working on the mind for thousands of years, and I think stress is a modern phenomena. There have been research studies in done on people who practice meditation. Uh, uh, where it says that they don't feel the stress, what we call as stress in the modern terms. So there is good stress and bad stress. That's the way we look at it as
Right.
well. And good stress is that's the one that motivates us, right, towards our goals or what we want to do. But bad stress is we get stuck in our emotions, and I think that's where stress starts to impact really our body. uh, but coming back to your question, in terms of that mindfulness helps, there are many benefits of mindfulness. And when we talk about mindfulness, that we start becoming aware of what this thing within our mind, our body, is what we call as the mind. uh, the mind really gets activated when we do anything in this world. When as soon as we wake up, when we are asleep, we don't know what's happening in the mind. We are in this dream state, what we call as a dream state, or a deep sleep state. Uh, and Or even further, uh, whether we are in Turiya. But as soon as we are awake, there is something that really awakens within us, right? So the consciousness helps us to be awake at that point of time. And when we are awake, the mind gets activated, and the nature of the mind is such that it is clear and knowing, that the mind is always uh, knows what it needs to do, uh, and given the right information, it knows uh, uh, what needs to be done. And clear can be the example of a very serene lake, uh, which is calm and peaceful, and that's how our mind is supposed to be. But as soon as you maybe uh, activated by throwing a piece of stone, or putting something on the top of the water, there are ripples that come in. And our mind is such, like if you sit still, after a while, our mind will become like uh, that water, which is just calm, and nothing is happening. And when it's calm, you can look through the mind, uh, and that's where the joy really comes in, and that's what most of the traditions are trying to teach as well. And in terms of knowing, uh, uh, it knows, it has the right wisdom of what needs to be done, because it has been trained in a beautiful way. And I think Gandhiji said it very beautifully, that someone, who was it, Vinoba Bhave, I think, asked him, how do you know what is the right uh, what is the right place where you need to go do your satyagraha? or act against injustice. He's like, I just sit down and listen to my inside, and what comes is the right thing for me to do. So there's a lot of wisdom that comes from the mind. Now, when we are talking about mindfulness and its benefits, uh, I think what has really happened is that uh, uh, there's so many benefits to it, and there is a method to the madness of how do we make the mind work. And the thoughts, as you mentioned, can be negative thoughts, thoughts can be positive, or thoughts can be neutral. There are only three types of thoughts that come in within the mind. Uh, and when you are focused on the object of meditation, when you're sitting down, and even in the real world, when you're not meditating at that point of time, thoughts will keep arising. Now it is up to us whether we want to grasp a negative thought and work on it, or whether we want it to be, right? Like maybe you have a house, and you have a rodent that's in the house, right? You notice the rodent, uh, and you're like, no, no, it has to go out. It has to go out, and the rodent's like running away here or there or something like that, and you think it's not right, so I have to do something about it. You open the door, and after a while you give up. You're like, what do I do? There's nothing that I can do. And then one day the rodent will be like, oh, the door is open, I will go away. Because rodent doesn't know what is inside or outside. We are the ones running behind, the chasing behind the rodent, saying, no, no, you're not good, you're not good. But rodent doesn't know it's not good. The negative thought doesn't know it's not good. Right? I mean, it doesn't know, but you are grasping it, you are running after it, and that's why the rodent will keep running. The thought will keep running. Uh, but if you just let it be, it will go. Because the nature of the thought is also such that when it arises, it will also go down. Anything, just like our life, we are alive, we have come to a living, but we'll die. That's the only truth in the world, that we will all die no matter what. And if that's the only reality, the same reality can be applied to anything in our life. And when you do that, uh, I think life tends to start becoming much more easier to live with, uh, because the idea of control goes away, the idea of belonging goes away, the idea of saying that, oh, I didn't get this, I didn't get that. Uh, and I think when you do that, you start to go towards the origin of why did these negative thoughts arise? Why are these arising in my mind? It is because the way we are perceiving things, it's the judgment that's coming in. And that's going back to the definition of sati, of mindfulness, that don't think about it. If you don't think about it, the thoughts will not arise. And when you don't let the thoughts arise, everything will be calm at that point of time. Um, there is a beautiful experiment that's done in monasteries quite a bit, um, where one of the first exercises they are told is to look at the thoughts within the mind, and they are told that you every day you have to sit, and they're given pieces of marbles, so multiple colored marbles, one for positive thought, one for negative thoughts. And initially majority of, and they say as soon as the thought arises, you put whichever colored marble is there. Like if it's negative, you put that. If it's positive, you put that. And initially, majority of the thoughts for many people are negative. And as the progression goes, as the progression over the years, these monks practice, they start to notice that their thoughts are more positive. Like it's more of the positive thoughts, marbles that are there. Now, always the question is, has the thoughts turned positive, or the way we look at them have changed? Okay? And that's the beauty of it. It's our perception of what is positive and what is negative. So we coexist with every thought, whether that's positive or negative. But eventually, there are multiple ways that the negative thought, if you think that's negative, it will subside. If you are a long-term practitioner, then you'll notice that negative has also positive in it. There are many experiences which people go through in their life, and they always choose to look at very many positive thoughts, right? So when they look at these uh, 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 incredibly positive ways of looking at things. There is a beautiful story of a, I think it's an Argentinian golfer who had won a PGA championship. PGA is the highest form, like a Grand Slam kind.
Yeah.
Not one of the four, but one of the PGA championships. Uh, and when he won the championship, a lady came outside uh, and said that my child is sick. Uh, uh, my child will die uh, if I don't get the money for operation. And this golfer was so incredible. Uh, the golfer said, "Why don't you take the entire check?" I don't know how much amount of money, but he donated his entire winnings. And after a few weeks, he was sitting in the clubhouse, and one of the attendants came and said, "We heard that you gave that money away, and it's a very noble thing to do. But you know what? That lady was dying, or was lying, because there is no child who needed operation who was dying." And he said, "These people are cheats," and all the negative things that come to our mind, that we want to put into our mind. And the golfer is so happy. He's like, "What's going on? Why are you so happy?" Uh, and he's like, "This is the best news you have given me." He's like, "What are you talking about? You lost so much money. Uh, you have lost so much money, and uh, what do we do?" And he says something which is very beautiful. He says, "The reason why it's the best news that you have given me is because there's no child who's dying." Right?
Beautiful. Yeah.
And when you have that kind of uh, uh, way of thought process, I think there is something uh, to aspire for each individual in this world, the way we can look at things. Yeah.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's all in our hands. I won't say we use the word control because,
Uh,
but yeah, it's all in our hands. And
it's
I guess it comes with practice, right? This comes with practice. The more meditative and mindful you get in your daily life.
Yeah, practice is the key, but some people don't need practice. They're prodigies in meditation. They are born Krishnas, they are the born Vishnus, they are the born Buddhas, whatever you want to call them, right?
That's true actually, because you see some people they just sail through life, without taking any stress. And like, care, whatever will happen, and why stress about it? So that's very true. For some people, it comes naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another thing, there's a lot of neuroscience also attached to, mindfulness. I mean, if you can talk about that. And before that, mindfulness is also supposed to be a cure for daydreaming and the default mode network, etc., and the rumination. So, all that also, these are terms, but I know these are important terms. If you could explain that as well.
Mm. Um, I don't know if cure is a very strong word. I don't cure is what we are looking for, because that means you are sick, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I I think that again places a very negative connotation to something. And I think we are who we are, where we are, uh, and everything will deteriorate the moment we are born. We say the child is growing up. When we are growing older, oh, we are going to die, right? But the moment that you are born, you are going to die, right? We're just moving towards death only.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
it.
yeah.
That's
That's
the only thing
reality. Hmm.
that's the reality. Yeah. And uh, I think when we talk about mindfulness, we talk about many things. Classically there are four distinctions of mindfulness, like the way we talk about it. But let's talk about at least the first one, the mindfulness of body, the awareness of our physical body. And when we talk about awareness of our physical bodies, uh, is that we understand how our body is talking to us. It's always constantly, excuse me, it's always constantly communicating with us. And when the body is communicating with you, uh, if you don't listen to it and keep doing things by yourself, right? I mean, uh, uh, when kids are growing up, in the teenage years, when the hormones are high, and the way we think about, like, we say these are the teenage years and they're rebels and all that, the labels that we put on them, right? It's unfortunate because we say that they are always going to be this way, but that's not the case. uh, Similarly, our body, is always communicating with us. It's always telling us. An example can be when you have a heavy meal. When you have a heavy meal, like your body is telling you that this is something which is very heavy and I cannot digest. And you keep doing it again and again, and every day there is a message that comes like something's wrong. And even if you are more aware, that message comes as soon as you're taking the food in. Hey, remember yesterday we had this problem? But no, 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 no. Like, my taste is more important to me. Uh, that part of my brain which is I need to enjoy this moment, I don't care. And after a while, you there is a much negative consequence that comes in, where some part of the body gives in and says like I cannot handle it anymore. And uh, like if you know that India is the diabetic and the cancer capital for the world. Like right now, I think we have a 13% or 12% of the population is diabetic or pre-diabetic. And the reason for that is because the kind of food that we eat. And of course, the supply is one aspect of it, but eventually the choice is in our hands what we need to do. Uh, so when we talk about the idea of uh, daydreaming or uh, getting attached to thoughts from the past, which is what rumination essentially uh, uh, means, that at every point of time, the body is communicating with you. If the body communicates with you, it's telling you that this is what I want to do, right? I want to think about something in the past. Right? But then you also have a choice at that point of time to ignore it, right? We forget that we have the power to say no. Right? We have built the habits of working with the mind in such a way because there's no formal education for it, right? And because there is no formal education, we feel that we are bound by a thought and there is no avenue for it. But if you look at our scriptures, the beautiful scripture, I mean, look at Bhagavad Gita, 18 different ways of understanding and overcoming within the challenges of the mind. 18 different ways. You pick any of the chapter and you will get enough for life. In fact, sometimes we say you pick just one shloka and then you have enough for life. That's what they say. And then if you don't have that much also, you pick just one, right? One shloka, then one part of the shloka, then just one word of the shloka. Then they say, don't do anything, just say Om. And that's enough for life, right? Like that, in the Yoga Sutras, it says that to communicate to the universe, we say Tasya Vachak Pranava. Like just all you need to say to connect to Ishvara is Om. That's all we need to do. And that's what Mahabharata says as well. When the war started, what did the Pandavas say? We need this much. Then they said, give us this much. Then 5 villages. Don't give less. They came to this, and the other person, Duryodhan, said, no, I'm not ready to give up. Mahabharata is all what is happening within our mind. It's nothing else. It's our mind put outside. And Krishna has given us 18 ways of figuring out what are the different pathways to overcome the Chakravyu, which is happening within our mind. If Ashmed was not able to listen to end part of it, but part of it he
Abhimanyu, yeah.
Abhimanyu, sorry,
Yeah,
Abhimanyu
yeah.
was not able to listen to it. Right? The end part is like we got stuck somewhere in the mind, right?
Yeah, it's
Right?
fascinating.
But
Yeah.
but that's where the wisdom comes in. That's where our wisdom comes in. Like, what is it that we can do? Because eventually God wants you to solve the problems on your own. You have to take action. Without us taking action, it won't happen. The effort has to be put in. So, to your original question of practice, that is where it comes in. It's not about the practice, it's about the intention and the effort, the virya. That is what we need to do. We need to put in the effort. Without effort, nothing will happen. Some days will be good, other days will be better. Right? Like when we talk about the daydreaming within our mind, when we talk about rumination in our mind, yes, many people go through it and it is challenging. It is extremely difficult, right? But you have to do something about it, right? And luckily, in the modern days, at least to begin with, you can take some medications and you can get over if you have extreme forms of trauma or extreme difficulties. But I believe majority can really overcome them. Majority can overcome by just simply taking a walk outside or just simply breathing. You take one breath, how beautiful it is. You go admire something in the nature. There is so much that nature has given us to help us. Everything that we do, like let's say, for example, the cars, right? They mimic the way our body works. We have an engine, we have everything else. Like they have designed everything like a face is designed, right? They didn't even say, like, let's have like five things. No, no, we'll only have two. No, no, you can have put four, five. No, no, we'll just put two there. We'll have a nose in the middle. Like they could have done anything else. But no, the nature inspires us. And if the nature is inspiring us, then we have to go look out for those answers. We just have to be aware. So the mindfulness of the body is what that is, that the answers are there from within. It's telling you all the time that you have the capability to overcome any situation in life. Yeah. And I'm oversimplifying it, any situation, because right now with so many challenges people are facing all over the world, so we cannot simplify it as much as it is. But I'm talking about, when we have very little problems and we forget to look at how grateful we are to have our body, our mind, our houses, place to live in, the food that we eat, the money that we have, the relationships that we have. But many don't, right? So let's not oversimplify it for many people who are going through extreme difficulties. And they also hopefully, we pray that everyone will be okay. And for the time being that we are here on this planet Earth, let's cherish what we can, and uh, and really enjoy every moment. And that's what mindfulness is all about. And if you're able to do that, I think the uh, meaning of the life that we have really comes alive, really comes alive.
Yeah, what you're saying, even I do that at times. Like if you're just, I just focus on my breathing. I
Yeah,
just, because the breath is with you, we just forget about it.
yeah,
Yeah, just see it going in and out. That's it. It's as simple as that.
yeah. It's something that's with us from the moment that we're born till the moment we die.
Yeah, literally.
Mm.
Also, the neuroscience of it, can you
Oh
explain?
yeah,
Because I know
yeah.
there's a lot of science attached to mindfulness. They've done a lot of experiments, etc.
Yeah, there has been a lot of research that has happened. I think Richie Davidson, one of the well-known neuroscientists, uh, who is at University of Madison, Wisconsin. He's done a lot of research and written a few books also about it. And one of the earlier, I think in the 90s, they had done some fMRIs, which are done, which is functional MRIs. They put something on your head, some things, and they measure certain parts of the brain, whether whether how your brain is reacting to different situations. So they give you difficult situations, and they found out that certain part of the brain, which we call as the gray matter of our brain, which in the modern terms is called prefrontal cortex, PFC as they call it, where we take the higher level decisions, uh, uh, where we take higher level decisions. So that gets activated, or that's much more thicker for people who have been meditating for a long period of time. So that's one part of it. Uh, The second part is that when they go through challenges, they tend to. So we have something in our brain which is called the fear center of our brain, and a lot of us respond to the challenges through fear centers. And when they respond through fear center, we tend to people who have been meditating for a long period of time, they tend to respond from the prefrontal cortex rather than from your fear center within the body. I think the third and the most significant part of the neuroscience is that what neuroscience has shown is there have been research that has been done where people have been taught meditation and mindfulness. I think there have been experiments on mindfulness as well. I don't remember the exact studies, but there has been experiments where people, control group and another group has been taught mindfulness for 8 weeks, and they have seen the changes in the prefrontal cortex within 8 weeks. So our brain continues to evolve uh, uh, over a period of time. So anyone at any age can make mindfulness and meditation part of their life. And that's what neuroscience is saying. Because people say that I will not be able to change, I don't change. And I think that's the area that they're going after, is to say that that our brain can change in at any age if you do practice only for 8 weeks. And I think some research has shown if you take 3 breaths itself, uh, you can change. And yeah, I mean, many changes have been brought in, and a lot of research is going on in the field of mindfulness, um, which talks about that. I think I'm unable to remember the name of the book, which is Altering Traits, I think, is another book that talks about uh, uh, I think they've renamed the book as Altering Traits. It was a different name before,
Okay.
uh, but people didn't relate to that, so they they worked from the DNA as to how the DNA changes uh, when you do meditation and mindfulness. It was started with EQ, the emotional intelligence, and then they talk a lot about mindfulness in that book through meditation and then compassion-based practices.
Right. I think neuroplasticity is the term.
Neuroplasticity is the term. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
Mm.
Neuroplasticity is the term.
That
Yeah,
the
you're
brain evolves, grows, changes, throughout your life.
correct. It's plastic in nature. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Right.
that's
Yeah. That's great. Also, for me, what has worked, I've seen and I've seen that you've also spoken about it. It's the ability to respond rather than react within a situation.
yeah,
That's what mindfulness also gives you.
yeah. I think that originates. That's the beginning of every study that you go in. It came from the Buddha that there are two types of arrows that we deal with. The first is that if someone hits you an arrow, there is and let's say it hits you. And so if someone's speaking badly to you, or if someone cuts you off, if someone's doing things that you don't like, that's the first kind of arrow that hits us. And in most cases, we can't do anything about it. But the second arrow is the way our mind responds to it. And that response is something which is in our hands. And the entire field of study of the mind is just based on that second arrow. And that is what led for Buddha to say that I am neither a teacher nor God, I am the awakened one. So when you know that you can respond rather than react, and if you're able to understand what happens within that response, like the way the research that is going on right now, that we started with the atoms and then slowly the electrons and some of the other things, now nanoparticles, and going further. Now we're going to quanta and even further going down. Similarly, within our mind, just by experiences, we're able to figure out that when we are responding, how slow we can get, how we can train our mind in such a way that when we respond to such things, when we respond to such things, what are some of the changes that we can bring within our mind? That's the beauty of response.
Yeah, beautiful. Also, I was reading, there are a lot of articles, on this now. So there's something called mech mindfulness and how mindfulness may be sedating us.
Mm,
So just want your thoughts on that because, like you said, we should not oversimplify it. There are real problems in the world. So
mm,
what happens at times that, you're working, there are problems outside, but you're working on yourself inside,
mm.
right? So you're calmer, you're reacting, responding rather than reacting, all that is happening. But we should also work on solving the challenges outside, right? Not ignore those challenges. Like, suppose you have a bad boss, bad policies at the workplace. So one should also work at changing them rather than just learning to live with it.
Yeah, I think uh, mm, just not about mindfulness, right? It's been going on for centuries. People like Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, Mother Teresa, now Dalai Lama, Desmond Tutu. So many examples. I mean, And within our nation, like if you look at so many people who are trying to resolve these challenges from outside, uh, but each person is different, right? We should appreciate if someone's trying to do things from within and work on them, and that might be a good starting point for them. But when a challenge doesn't get solved, what do you do at that point of time? I think that's where the real challenge begins. When the outside world challenge is not getting resolved, uh, and you're stuck in the situation for a long period of time, right? If there's a war happening, for example, in the place where you're at, or let's say you have a bad boss, I mean, extreme examples, like, one, like the whole country, and then second, this, what do you do? Things are outside, you can't do anything about it, right? And maybe you're trying to change things, but you're stuck. Like there's nothing that you can do about that. But it's not about that. It's not about because, as I mentioned, two types of responses. The first is not in our control, right? And when we start to work on our insight, when we start to work within our body and within our mind, we start to go deeper. Maybe the way we look at things, like the what we started with, the way we look at things may change as well, and may start to slowly nudge things in a way that we are also okay, and the other things also start becoming okay, right? Because sometimes we're not so sure what makes us do certain things, right? There are I was reading a book this morning. I think it's called Same as Ever. The person who had written the psychology of the mind, who's the author of the book? It's Morgan Housel, and he gives an example of, in the opening of the book, he gives an example where he went skiing when everything was closed because there was a snowfall and things were closed in the resort. And these were teenagers, so they decided to go. He went and skied with few friends. He came back, and two other friends wanted to go, and they all went. And he said, "No, no, I will not go. I will pick you up because you don't have to hitchhike back then, because it takes a minute to come down. Then you have to hitchhike. There's a lot of gear that you have to bring it back." And they went up. He waited there. They didn't come. He's like, maybe they hitchhiked before. They came before. He went home. He's like, maybe they went to work. Then in the evening, the mother called. The boy had not returned, and the mother was a skier, so she put two and two together, and everything happened. And unfortunately, they both had passed away. There was an avalanche, and he said, "I have never been able to figure out why I said no." And there are so many situations, probably in your life, in many people's lives, they don't know why they do certain things, why they don't do certain things, right? So if you have the understanding that there is something beyond you that is making things happen, it makes things a lot more easier. And when you understand that there is someone who's beyond you, someone who's helping you to be more helpful, and who's taking care of you, right? But you need to do your due diligence. You need to be kinder, you need to be compassionate, you need to be loving. I think then it makes things easier. And I think same. I was listening to the story of Vinoba Bhave and Gandhiji having a conversation about this. That when he did satyagrahas, that things didn't change. So that means the other person's not responsive. We need to be harder. We need to do this. He's like, no, we need to be more kinder. We need to be more loving. We need more compassion in our lives so that we understand them and they understand us. And when we are in that situation, when we look at the world in that way, I think something shifts within our mind, something subtle shifts. And life is a lot more joyous. Life is a lot more fun to live that way. Right? And that's the beauty of life. That's the beauty of life. That's what I personally feel. That yes, the negative and the positive, all that is there, and you can always find a negative and a positive, right? No matter what. But it is up to you. What is it that you want to take from it? Uh, yeah.
And you're right, and maybe it can be a longer discussion some other time, but actually things change outside when things change within. I've seen that myself when I started transcendental meditation. So
Mm.
actually things become easier outside. It's funny how that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Always. Always.
Yeah, really.
Glad
Uh,
that you experienced that.
yeah. Also, you run a workshop, mindfulness for effective leadership.
Correct,
So,
correct.
can you talk about that? What is this, and why do we need it? Why do leaders need it, really?
Mm. I think I'll just preface that with I think yoga is something that all of us need more
Right.
than anything else. Mindfulness is a subset of it. And I think it's the greatest gift that a human can give to themselves is practicing yoga, whether it's the asana practice or the pranayama or meditation. I think that's more important. But coming back to mindfulness and effective leadership, this course was designed along with Professor Dinesh at IIM Bangalore, Professor Dinesh Kumar. And uh, yeah, he said, there's a lot of issues in the world. He's a Zen practitioner and an amazing practitioner. And he started that can we help leaders understand their mind so that they can, uh, uh, one, they can be stressed less. Uh, but for them, can we help them understand stress first? And through these practices, so that's one thing that we do help people understand their mind. These are the leaders from across the nation who come in for a 3-day workshop and this workshop happens at IIM Bangalore. We typically do it twice a year. The next one will be in July, I think. The next one is in July, and I think there's one in December. So that's when we do that. And these leaders, they come in and we start working and understanding what are some of the challenges that they face. Because any sort of workshop that happens, we have to understand what is going on first, and then we start working with them. Uh, and from a foundation perspective, we make them understand uh, uh, the theory behind what is mindfulness, what are some of the ways mindfulness works, and what is mindfulness, and what is empathy and compassion, some of the terms that you had mentioned earlier before we started the call. And then we go into application mode. Like, how can you apply it if you're a leader in your teams? We cover NVC, which is nonviolent communication. We cover MSC, which is mindfulness, self-compassion. We cover compassion for others, how to be compassionate in a very difficult situation. And then we cover things like compassion on the go. How can you be always mindful and compassionate at all times, no matter what the situation is? Because within the storm that's happening, within uh, uh, the storm that's going on, there is a center of the eye, right? There's a center of the storm, and that's where you are. And if you can be in that situation, and that's the point, that's the stillest of the point, everything else is revolving around it, right? So we teach them to be that central point. That's how we start the program, that you are this person, no matter what happens, you are this, right? And if you are this person, everything else will eventually calm down, because anything that comes up will goes away. But if you are sthir in your mind, right, and that's what you got, sukham sthiram asanam, right? They say that asana should be, it should be peaceful, right? Give you happiness and still. And if you're able to find that stillness in every moment, no matter what's happening around you, I think a lot of joy comes. And then you're able to respond to things in a very meaningful way. And to your earlier question, that the problems that are outside, when we are trying to resolve the problems outside, they will also subside over a period of time. And there is a lot of research that has happened. People who practice mindfulness, like a lot of people who come back from war or difficult places, they have something called PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. But the people who practice mindfulness practices, there is enough research to show that they have 0 ounce of PTSD. Nothing. Nothing. And there's a story which His Holiness the Dalai Lama tells about one of the practitioners. So in 1959, uh, uh, when Dalai Lama came to India, a lot of people were taken prisoners, and a lot of monks were taken prisoners. And one of the monks, I don't remember his name, he was taken and he was in the prison for 18 years, if I'm not wrong, 18 or 15 years, a long time. And the Dalai Lama was having a conversation with him when he came back from the prison, and he was asking how was it and everything. And the monk said, at 2 times, During the entire thing, I had a difficult time. And he's like, what happened? Did they try to do something to you? Were you going to be executed? That's the first thought that comes to your mind, right? Like, did they torture you or something? He's like, oh no, all that was okay. Like, that I was able to face. But in my mind, I had negative thoughts 2 times in 18 years. Yeah, right? So it's about the practice that you have. Can you be compassionate at all times, no matter what, right? And because the other human is also a human, they have a garb of this is the way I look like, this is a stereotype, like this is, you're wearing glasses so you're like this, you're wearing xyz colors, you're like that, this is the way you speak, so you're like, no, can you look beyond all that, and can you look at the human, who's just has this satchitanand, always joyous, always happy in their life. So it's up to us eventually, how we want to perceive things, what we want to do. Whether it's a difficult situation, we can practice mindfulness, and we can simply start by sitting for a minute in a day. I think that's a good start.
Yeah, a minute in a day. There's also the loving kindness meditation and mindfulness, right?
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
that's one of the things that we cover in Mindful Effective Leadership. So it's a 3-day course where we do a lot of activities with this group, um, uh, and loving kindness is one of the applications that we talk about. So that's called Maitri, uh, and we include uh, the food that we eat. How can we be silent during our meals? So observe our food, what we eat. So we have silent meals. We have uh, we have different games that we play with them. Uh, we include mindful walking, barefoot walking, uh, and uh, uh, I think the activities uh, uh, really help them reflect as to who they are and what they would like to be. It's like a vision, a future version of themselves that we help create in their mind, and we give them a game plan for that, and then they go and enact on it depending upon how it works for them. That's our intention for them. And then whatever is their karma will happen.
yeah, wonderful. It's important to just get started.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So talking about compassion, so you're a compassion cultivation trainer. So whoever I have mentioned it to, they say, ki, what? You need to learn compassion.
Hmm.
That's the first thing.
Yeah.
And, first of all, I found it very interesting that Stanford, when I first came across this, I was also quite surprised that there is a course at Stanford for this, which
Hmm.
I think you did, right? So, could you talk about the course first and what drew you to it?
Um, So the course initially was started at Stanford in early 2010s or 12 or 13. It's by Thupten Jinpa, Geshe Thupten Jinpa, who uh, has been a translator for His Holiness for a long period of time. And he's also the head of Mind and Life Institute, one of the premier institutes in the US that works on research within the mind. And along there is a center in Stanford called Center of Compassion and Altruistic Research in Education, CCARE it's called. And as part of CCARE, they started this program on compassion where they took the Lojong, which is the mind training aspect, and Thupten Jinpa, along with few other founding teachers, they designed this 8-week course to bring compassion in their lives. I think to say that to your first question about that I need to train on compassion, I think first we need to know whether we have what is compassion, right? So I think that's the most important thing, because that's one thing that I didn't realize, that many of us don't even know what compassion is. Uh, and to understand compassion, it's just simple act of helping others when you see that they're going through problems. And because we have learned ourselves to do this in a physical way, we think it can only be physical. But compassion is much more deeper, that there are places where you cannot help. So the war example which I mentioned, or someone who is going through a terminal disease, for example, or someone who has lost a loved one, someone who's lost a child. What do you do at that point of time? You can't do anything about that, right? So at that point of time, these are the mind practices that you work within our mind. Can I send them some wishes, some wishful wishes that can help them. Because when you're able to do that, you need to be ready at the next moment to face the world, to do your things within the life. Because what happens is when you face challenging situations in life, you tend to go down and you are unable to perform your activities. So, what compassion not only does is it helps the other person in a way that you think is right for them, him or her, but it also prepares you for whatever comes next. And many people, you absolutely are correct, that they are naturally have this capacity because it's one of the four immeasurables, as we call it, that we all are compassionate. The moment that we are born, you look at a child, the child will always be helping someone else. But because of our experiences and the way we have grown up, we tend to choose certain things in life which we feel are correct and which we feel are not correct. So we tend to take those actions at that point of time. So when we say about building compassion or cultivating compassion in our lives, what we mean by that is that just like the muscle that we develop, let's say we perform yoga asanas. When you perform the yoga asana, certain muscles in the body will build up, the flexibility will increase. And there's also research that says that people who play chess for a longer period of time, their Alzheimer's is lower, they're able to connect many things. Similarly, compassion cultivation training is a way to train the muscle of our brain, this compassionate muscle that always keeps compassion at the upfront, rather than saying that let me judge the other person. Can I say, can I help the other person? Right. So let's say if someone cuts you off in traffic, and you're like, oh, this person cut me off, blah, blah, blah. But maybe this person has an emergency which you don't understand. Right. So can we be kind to them? Can we be compassionate towards them? Right. Uh, and we don't know what the other person's going through, and maybe we will be late, right? But that also doesn't mean that you are completely a pushover, that you are pushed over for things and you are unable to perform your daily actions. That's not what it means. It is put very beautifully that you have uh, your practices give you a soft front, but you have a very hard back. That your practices are so solid that you know that when you're being pushed over, how you need to be assertive in a very kind way. That you do the things that are required to be done. And when you're able to do the things in the right way, right, that doesn't mean violence, right? Because ahimsa is one of the top agendas. In fact, when the Dalai Lama came to India, he went to Rajghat to see the Samadhi. Even though ahimsa has been a big part of the Buddhist tradition, he said, that's going to be at the forefront of who we are, that non-violence is something we follow. And Gandhiji's message was not the things that he did. He said, my life is my message, right? So when we are talking about compassion, like when we talk about what is the message that you want to put out from your life, and that's what compassion helps you do. It brings this to the frontier that you are a compassionate human being, no matter what the situation is. And irrespective of the challenges that you face, your first response is compassion. So that's why the compassion cultivation training.
Right. And how is compassion different from empathy? I was reading an article last night. This again, I subscribed to the newsletter by Thupten Jinpa's Compassion Institute. So
Hmm.
it came from there. And they said that, there's something called compassion fatigue,
Hmm.
but there cannot be any compassion fatigue. It's a misnomer because you can have empathy fatigue.
Hmm.
Because
Correct.
compassion is something that you cannot get tired of.
Yeah. So when we talk about empathy is the first step for compassion, that you realize that the other person is going through challenges. So feeling for their emotions. So being with them. Um, and when you are in the moment with the emotions of the other person, you're able to feel for them. Now, what happens? So let's take, for example, our medical community. I mean, God bless all of them, and our police officers who are doing incredible hard work, traffic policemen, people who are helping in our houses, people who are watchmen, the amount of effort people do by hand. Uh, and when you look at that they have to deal with emotions, things have become very transactional in nature, because they are overwhelmed by emotion, right? So let's say, for example, you go to a medical practitioner, any medical practitioner, doesn't matter whether it's in a hospital or an Ayurvedic or someone else. You go to a practitioner, and if they make you just a number, they're like, हाँ जी बताइए क्या problem है, what is the problem, like, but on the other hand, they look in eye to eye, just, hi, how are you, is everything okay, just get to know a little bit, right? So put someone at ease at that point of time. But at some point, what is happening is, because everything has become transactional in nature, and it's not their fault, or it's not anyone's, I shouldn't say anyone's fault, but it's something that we can really work on, is that you are overwhelmed by emotions because you don't know how to process your emotions. And in the right terminology, it's called empathic distress. So not empathic fatigue, but empathic distress, that you're overwhelmed by emotions and you don't know how to process this emotion, so you give up and you're like, I don't want to do anything, because mentally, like the way you're working on your physical body, you're doing exercise, you're running, but if you're not doing anything for your mind, you will be overwhelmed, right? But if you do meditation, for example, if you process these emotions, your muscles are strong enough, you understand, let's say, for example, you see a lot of death, you see a lot of suffering. What do you do with that? Right? If you're a caregiver, what do you do at that point of time? Right? If you are in a place where a lot of people are just in last stages of their life, what do you do at that point of time? Right? So in all those places, you can train your mind in such a way that you work with them, not just in an empathetic way, but in a compassionate way. You understand their emotions and you help them in a way that they feel that they are comfortable, right? Because then that attachment will come as well. One of the challenges which people talk about is that if I give too much, what will I have left for my family and my things? And what they say is that the conversations are so much more richer if you are present compassionately for your colleagues, for your patients, for the people that you are working with, whether even if, like, at the traffic police, uh, if they talk to you nicely, they're like, no, if the first instance is this person is here to cheat me, yeah, maybe they are there to cheat you, but you do your due diligence. You can do it with a smile also. It doesn't matter, right? They'll get angry, but if you keep smiling, they're like, oh, this person, it's okay. Like, you pay your fine and you move on, right? But no, 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 you did this, you did this. They're like, no, that it doesn't work that way, right? Because then that will prompt them to be angry at someone else, they'll prompt them to be angry at someone else. They're always like this, like, and then we put labels on them. This person has done this bad thing, this person is bad, and if someone does according to the way that we think, oh, this person is my star candidate, he's just like the way that I wanted. Everyone's doing the best in their life. I think that's what they're doing. Every person is doing the best that they can. That's what I really believe in. Yeah. But if we believe that they can be helped in some way or the other, then you continue to preach your message just like Mahatma Gandhi, that my life is my message.
Beautiful belief. Also, you mentioned about giving, so that's a very common thing that I think even I've said it, that, emotionally drained, we have nothing left to give. These are very common phrases that we all
Yeah.
use.
Yes. Which is very common. So when we uh, don't have the ways to process them, whatever we hear from others is what we tend to do. When we grow up, and uh, the media influences us so much, whether it's television or whether it's now social media, and we tend to get attracted by such things. If you look at the movies that are most successful are the violent films, right? Because people enjoy violence, watching this and that. But is there real joy? Like, what are you breeding your child? Uh, it's up to you where you want to draw a line for yourself, and also what you want to see the world in 30, 40 years or next generation. It's up to you, right? It doesn't change overnight. It takes a few generations for things to really subtly shift. uh, like you know our, our Prime Minister Modi ji did such a wonderful thing of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan that started 10 years ago. But we are a large country, we have people, billion people, right? to get the message across, it's going to take a few generations, but at least it's a start. When we say that one of the cities is the cleanest, this is the second cleanest, at least there is a message that people are keeping the city clean, right? So, and that's how it works. One thing starts the action, and then you slowly move on, right? And that's the and one person cannot do everything, but one person can always start. That's what I really believe
Right.
in. Yeah.
And you recommended this book to me, Start Where You Are, How
Yeah.
to Accept Yourself and Others by Pema Chodron.
Hmm.
So I started it and it's so amazing. And then I ended up buying a couple of books based on her recommendations.
Hmm.
So you mentioned the Lojong teachings,
Hmm.
and I'd love you to talk more about that because so I've picked up this book, which she recommended also, The Great Path of Awakening by Jamgon Kongtrul.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it talks about the Tonglen practice, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, so
Hmm.
if you can talk about that, because it was fascinating for me that something like this exists, and there are, I think, statements, 56 statements or something that to ruminate on, and it's
54, yeah.
wonderful. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, so Lojong trainings are these are the trainings. This book called Mind Training was written in the 7th century, think something 1500 years ago.
Wow.
Was written 54 ways for us to understand our mind and train our mind in such a way that we are able to overcome any situation in this life. And I think if I remember, the first one is train the preliminaries. If I remember it correctly, that's the first one. Uh, and when we say train the preliminaries, is that, and this has similarities in yoga as well. The first sutra of the Yoga Sutra is Atha Yoga Anushasanam, that now yoga begins. And train the preliminaries is exactly the same thing. My intention begins everything. And if you have the right intentions, if you're able to put everything in a way that I would like to be calm in every situation, or at least have a good night's sleep, forget about calmness, right? Because that might be too far away from many people. But at least, can I have a good night's sleep without my thoughts? Or when I wake up in the morning, I have the energy, I'm enthusiastic about what I do. That's what it begins with. That's how it starts. That with a small and gentle intention. And like I always mention, that your intention makes a reality. The universe is so beautiful that something or the other will keep happening in your life that will move towards you. But only if you're mindful enough to understand what these subtle messages are from your body and the outside, right? But if you're not aware, then the challenges, then you'll be the person who's like, okay, you are coming, enjoying life, like having my food, wake up in the morning, have your tea, coffee, whatever drinks that harm you rather than help you, and have food which is again harming you rather than helping you, and continue to engage in negative conversations by looking at news and such things. And by the end of the day, oh, I'm exhausted, right? Or by the end of the day, you come in, if you are, on the other hand, if you wake up in the morning, all right, I have to do yoga practice, I have to meditate in the morning first thing, I write down my powerful intentions, this is the way I want my day to be. Yes, I'm happy, I'll go to my, or do my yoga, whether you do it at home or class, doesn't matter, wherever you do that. And then you are like, oh, today, this morning, I'm going to have, oh, maybe I'll fast today, or just have fruits, keep my body light. Or do I need something heavy? Maybe I'm listening and I'm responding to everything. And when I do that, I move to my work or whatever I do during the day. If I'm being, oh, today I have to go to work, but oh, I have to go to work today. No matter what, I will be cheerful, right? The other person will say this, no matter what, I decide to be cheerful. I decide to be this way because your intention is to be cheerful no matter what, right? Because you've decided that at the end of the day, I need good night's sleep. I will do my work. Sometimes the good night, the work that you do may not yield to the what the other person is asking for, but then it's up to you. How do you respond to it? What is it that you want to do? Things happen in the way that you are in this. If you're in Bangalore, maybe there's a lot of traffic, you're like driving 2 hours from one place to the other. Oh, either you can look around and pass on smiles to your neighbors who are in buses, or you can just enjoy this maya, that the beautiful world that we live in. And the story of uh, Vishnu and Narada, this beautiful story where Narada says that, why in the world people don't practice mindfulness? Why don't they pray to you? They have so much time. and Vishnu smiles and he's like, let's go on a walk. And they go on a walk. Um, and on the walk, they were passing through a desert, and Krishna says, or Vishnu says that I'm thirsty. Can you get me some water? Uh, and he goes down, and it's a desert, so there's an oasis, and there's a community around, and he goes, knocks on a door, and there's a beautiful girl that opens the door. He falls in love, and he's like, I want to marry you, and they get married. They have 3 kids. uh, and many years have passed away. The kids are older, and there's in that desert there is a uh, flood that comes, and everyone's drowning, and Narada Muni is saying, save me, bachao bhagwan, mujhe bachao, bachao. And then there is a hand that comes up from Krishna or Vishnu, and brings him up, and he sits on the sill, side man, watching the flood and enjoying. And Vishnu is like, अरे मेरा पानी लेके आए कि नहीं लेके आए?
Yeah.
So when you have that think that मेरे को ये करना है, ये करना है, ये भी करना है, ये भी करना है, when you get involved in this maya and you forget that there is something beyond this mind that is really making this universe work. I mean, how incredible, like we are this little thing in this universe, which is the exact distance from the sun so that we can survive, which has the exact gases in our atmosphere so that we can live, which is at the exact distance from the moon so that we can have our lunar cycles, exact distance from Mars and some of the other planets. So we have enough gravitational force so that we can revolve and rotate. And that has enough plants so that we can all survive, that we have the oxygen, and then we have this incredible machinery so that we can enjoy every single moment. And thinking that we are the ones doing that, I think we have to rethink that, right?
Yeah.
So, so that little problem of the rodent in the house, I think we have to rethink that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right. So I can't let you go without asking one more thing. You can answer it the way you want. So I again, because I've been doing this deep dive before speaking to you. So one was about I came across this term spiritual materialism. There's a book by Ken McLeod as well.
hmm,
So I'm just asking, like a lot of it is like, today we are trying to be the best versions of ourselves, right?
yeah, yeah.
Huh? But the question is not about ourselves. Is it about focusing inwards rather than, about it's spiritual, right? It's not about our personalities and things like that. So could you
Hmm.
just talk about the aim of mindfulness or meditation and
I think for each person it's very different. If you're a beginner, just don't aim too high. Like I said, just sit for a minute and just observe your body. And I think that's a good start to begin with. And there are no milestones per se. Uh, but if you sit in meditation for a little while, if you sit by closing your eyes and start observing with whatever is happening, slowly things will start to happen. These subtle shifts will keep coming in our mind. And I tell this story a lot, where one of my first yoga teachers told me, if you take a clear glass of water and put salt and sugar in it, initially you will see the particles. But if you stir it for a while, you'll notice that everything has disappeared, but the water is salty and sweet at the same time. And these practices are like that you may not see those changes, but you will have changed.
yeah, that's wonderful. So we don't have to set like huge goals or anything. It's just start and maybe start with a simple intention of getting a good night's sleep, really.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Thank you, Nitish, for giving us so much time. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.